Joining us again on the Sunrise Morning Show is Aram Hamparian. He is Executive Director of the Armenian National Committee of America and an advisor to In Defense of Christians. Good morning, Aram.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for joining us. So April 24th is Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. And for those not familiar, first of all, what is Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day? What is this all about?
Sure. About a century ago, in 1915, under the cover of the First World War, the Turks, the Ottoman Turks, set about destroying the Christian population of their empire. And they did that on the 24th by gathering Armenian and other Christian intellectuals, church leaders, lawyers, journalists, anybody who might get the word out or who might organize any opposition to their plans. And they arrested them and massacred them, and then set about over the next 7 or 8 years destroying essentially the entire Christian population of that empire, to the extent that today there's much less than 1% of the population is Christian, but in 1915 there was about 20% of the population was Christian.
Just as a point of fact, what is the definition of genocide?
Okay, the definition of genocide is the systematic, intentional destruction of an ethnic or national group. The U.S. helped shepherd through the landmark treaty after the Second World War, after the Holocaust. The U.S. signed that treaty, ratified that treaty. So has Turkey. So has almost every other country in the world. So it's basically an attempt to annihilate a group based on who they are.
And so why does this seem to be, the Armenian genocide, that is, why does this seem to be such a controversial issue in certain parts of the world?
Sure. I mean, if it were a crime that was acknowledged at the time and dealt with justly, then on April 24th we would go to church and light a candle and say a prayer. But the fact of the matter is that Turkey set about denying this crime as pretty much as they were committing it. And they tried to consolidate the fruits of the crime and to cover it up and to erase even the memory of the Armenians and the other Christians who populated, Asia Minor, where, really like our biblical homelands. So it's the denial, I think, that's made it a political issue, plus the fact that they continue it until this very day. Until this very day, Turkey and its ally Azerbaijan continue to attack Armenians, continue to try to drive the Armenians off of their ancestral lands. So it's an ongoing process, I think, that is lied about and continued. I think that combination makes it relevant today.
I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on Turkey lately.
Sure. I mean, Turkey, once positioned itself as an ally of the U.S., and at times they were. For example, if you go back to the era of the Korean War and some of the Soviet conflicts that took place back during the Cold War. But over the last 10 or 20 years, Turkey has turned its back on America, turned its back on NATO, and yet, here's the irony. America continues to enforce Turkey's gag rules, like, for example, not talking about the Armenian genocide or taking Turkey's side in the Cyprus issue or, ignoring the abuses of the Kurds. We extend all this deference to Turkish sensitivities, but Turkey's doing none of that in return. Turkey's basically, sides with America's enemies, buys weapons from America's adversaries, has, very little regard for NATO, in fact, undermines NATO. So they kind of want it both ways. They want to be a bad actor in the region, but they still want the, unquestioned U.S. support for their priorities.
Now, where does the U.S. stand on this issue of the Armenian genocide currently?
That's a great question. And the answer is partially on the right side and partially on the wrong side. The House and Senate in 2019 passed very strong resolutions condemning the Armenian genocide. In Defense of Christians was a super important part of that, the passage of those resolutions. But the executive branch has yet to formally come down on the side of recognition of the Armenian genocide. And this, Saturday, we hope that America will finally, end this chapter of, let's say, end this gag rule. It's really the longest gag rule, I think, in American history. I don't think anyone can point to an example in which another country has dictated U.S. policy on a human rights issue for essentially a century.
Do you have much hope that the current administration would recognize the Armenian genocide?
We are hopeful. With the House and Senate having acted, with 49 of the U.S. states having recognized the genocide, with the media and academia and so much of the rest of America, we think that the Biden administration will do the right thing. We're hopeful that they will. We'd be extremely troubled if they don't.
What would that look like? I mean, would it be a statement from the State Department recognizing this? I mean, what are you hoping for from the Biden administration specifically on April 24th?
Well, typically on April 24th, American presidents, Democrats and Republicans, have issued a statement, but the statement has used euphemisms and evasive terminology like massacres or deportations to avoid using the word genocide, which has a very strong legal meaning. Mm-hmm. So our hope is that when the president issues his April 24th statement this year, that he'll be very forthright in describing what happened to the Armenians as a genocide.
And why is it so important that there be a recognition that this was, in fact, a genocide?
Well, for two reasons. First, so that there can be justice for the crime, right? Genocide is a crime. A massacre or a murder, these are like sort of vague terms, but a genocide is very clearly an international crime, and the international community actually signed a convention called the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, because we believe in punishing genocide, that we believe in justice. That's number one. Number two, because it's ongoing. Turkey and Azerbaijan never stopped being aggressive toward the Armenians, never stopped trying to get rid of the Armenians. They fought a war last fall against the Armenians, driving Armenians from even more of their indigenous biblical-era homeland. So our hope is for justice on the one hand, but to stop the ongoing aggression on the other.
We've been talking to Aram Hamparian, the executive director of the Armenian National Committee of America. He's an advisor with In Defense of Christians. And Aram, if listeners want to get more information, or do you have any kind of method of them going in and taking action, encouraging the Biden administration to use the strong language of genocide on Saturday?
Absolutely. If folks will go to anca.org/genocide, they can write a letter to their members of Congress and to President Biden, and we need every voice. There's an awful lot of foreign pressure on this issue, so every voice, every listener who can help is deeply appreciated.
anca.org/genocide, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. We will have that linked at sunrisemorningshow.com. Aram, thank you so much.